How's it going, guys? We are back, finally, with a new deck tech. Today we are talking about Burakos, the party leader. Now, as this card will imply, this deck is centered around building a party, so party tribal. What does that mean? What is a party? How does it work? And what benefits do you get? Let's start by breaking it down. So, talking about a party. What is a party and how does it work in this deck? Well, a party is a term used to define when you have any combination of a warrior, a cleric, a wizard, and a rogue together. So what that means is if you have a warrior on the field, you technically have a party of one. If you have a warrior and cleric together on the field at the same time, you have a party of two. If you have a warrior, cleric, wizard, party of three. And then obviously, if you have a rogue in there, you have a full adventurer's party. So the way this deck works is there are a lot of cards in this deck that reward you for having the party together, having more than one person in a group, right? So a couple things that we need to also square away is that some cards, like a shapeshifter, right? It has the changeling subtype, which means it's every creature type. Now, it cannot be a full party in and of its own. He can only fill the role of one adventurer. So you can have the changeling be a warrior and have a cleric next to him, as well as a rogue, right? Now you have a party of three. He can't be the warrior, wizard, and cleric, and then have a full party with just two people. So that's some important rules that you are going to want to bear in mind when talking about parties. So as you have more people together, you'll have a full party. Now, you can only have one full party at a given time. So it doesn't matter if, let's say, I have another group of cards over here comprised of warrior, wizard, you know, all those things. It doesn't matter if I have two full parties. I'll only be accounted for one party for the cards that require it, right? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but that's what it means in a nutshell. Now let's get into our commander and talk about what needs to be done. Coming back to Burakos, the party leader. He is a 4-mana, 2/4 orc. Just an orc. Now, why did I hesitate on that last part? Well, because his first line of text says he is also a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard. So what that means is he can fill the role no matter what it is, whatever you need in your party, he will fill that role and become it, right? Now, his next effect is whenever he attacks, defending player, so the person you're attacking, loses X life and you make X treasure tokens, X being the number of creatures in your party. So if you have Burakos and let's throw some people in there. Let me grab, there you go, a changeling, right? Changeling can fill any role, we've talked about this. And a wizard, right? So when he attacks, there's a party of 3 on the field. So he is going to deal 3 damage, or take 3 life from your opponent, and make 3 treasure tokens for you, right? So that's his first effect. His last effect here is you also come in with a background. So that means this is going to be a 2-color deck, right? Because the background that we run is Folk Hero. Your commander gains the effect. Whenever you cast a spell that shares a creature type with this creature, draw a card. Now here's the thing. Burakos is a cleric, rogue, warrior, wizard like we talked about. And this entire deck is going to be filled with clerics, rogues, warriors, and wizards. So whenever you cast an effect, right? Whenever you cast a different creature to help the party, the folk hero would trigger and give you card advantage, right? So that's the commander, and that's the accompanying background. Now let's get into some creatures and talk about how everything works together. So this is a creature-heavy deck, and it's going to be centered around making sure you always have the roles filled on your party. Kicking it off, we have a changeling outcast, right? 1 mana, 1/1, you know, can't be blocked, and it also can't block. It can also fill any role in that party. Very important. Archpriest of Iona is next. Iona? Yeah, I was right. Archpriest of Iona. It's a 1-mana star 2. What that means is its power is equal to the number of creatures in your party. So if you have a full party, this will be a 4/2 for 1 mana. This is the important part. At the beginning of combat on your turn, if you do have a full party, a target creature gains +1/+1 and flying until the end of turn. So a little bit of evasion. Usually you apply that to your commander because you want your commander swinging out to drain life from your opponent and give you treasure. Soul Warden is giving us some life gain, and it's a cleric. Mother of Runes gives us protection, another cleric. Blood-Soaked Champion. It can't block, but it's a 2/1 and it's a warrior. The raid effect is pretty useful too because it allows you to get a warrior onto the battlefield. If, let's say, you have a field full of clerics, rogues, and wizards, and you just need that one warrior to fill the party, the raid effect will allow you to reanimate him to help you get that effect in. Soul's Attendant, very similar to the Soul Warden. Benevolent Bodyguard, similar to the Mother of Runes. Suture Priest, whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain 1 life, and whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your opponent's control, that player loses life. A little bit of a drain. You're going to start seeing this pattern here, right? A cleric for you. We have more clerics, right? With the Sadistic Pilgrim, 2 mana, 2/2, Death Touch. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain 1 life. Similar to the Suture Priest. So you're seeing that we're just pinging our opponent's life as we're playing things. We're looking to drain our opponent out in this deck, right? The Guild Mage gives a creature lifelink and gives and you have a secondary effect. Whenever you gain life this turn, each opponent loses that life. So more drained from life gain. Zulaport Cutthroat. It's a rogue and it's a Zulaport Cutthroat. Selfless Spirit, sacrifice it. Creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of turn. We'll pause here and talk about this real fast. One of the big drawbacks of this deck is that you are very susceptible to board wipes. If you're not careful, then that party that you assembled is going to be eradicated. So it's nice to have some sort of protection and keep redundancy in this deck. Redundancy meaning, like, in case this doesn't work, you have this to fall back on. So Selfless Spirit is a huge assist for that. Jadar, the Ghoul Caller, right? He's a wizard, and at the end of your turn, you create a zombie. Now, the zombie doesn't have a creature type beyond just zombie and decayed, but it's a nice thing to just fill the battlefield with and give your opponent something to worry about. Deep Gnome Terramancer, right? This is a gnome wizard, and it allows us to start drawing planes from our deck and putting it on the battlefield whenever 1 or more lands enter the battlefield under an opponent's control without being played. So anything they crack a land for, right? Terrapomorphic Expanse, things like that, that allows us to get some land on the field. I like him just because he's a 2/2, right? For 2 mana and a wizard. Tenacious Underdog is our warrior with Blitz, right? 4 mana, pay 2 life, right? You may cast it from your graveyard using its Blitz ability. Talking about what we were talking about earlier. Rumor Gatherer, right? An elf wizard. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If it's the second time, draw a card, right? We need some card advantage, and a wizard will definitely help us. Grim Haruspex, 3 mana. Right? Whenever another non-token creature you control dies, draw a card. Frontline Medic, a little more protection. You can sacrifice him to counter a spell with X in its mana cost, unless its controller pays 3 more, right? I like his Battalion ability too. Whenever he and at least 2 other creatures attack, the creatures you control gain indestructible until the end of turn. So pull that party together, swing with the Frontline Medic and everyone else, and they all gain indestructible. Mage's Ascendant. I really like Mage's Ascendant. 3 mana, 3/2. When it enters the battlefield, create a wizard, right? It's a rogue, and it allows you to create a wizard when it enters the battlefield. So you already create 2 party members just for 1 card, which is very, very good. The wizard has an ability that for 1 mana, you can sacrifice it to counter a non-target creature spell until it unless its controller pays 1. So a nice additional effect that'll force your partner to pause and think. Nighthawk Scavenger, 3 mana, 1 plus star in power, and then 3 toughness. Flying Death Touch Lifelink Rogue for 3 mana. Its power is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyard. So I don't really see it being useful much. I like its evasion in flying, and I like its ability to protect us through its Death Touch. Lifelink is useful as well. So it just has a lot of useful card effects, and if your opponent's running a discard style deck, you're able to take advantage of that. Nightblade. Whenever a token you control leaves the battlefield, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. Those treasures that our commander is making, when you crack them, each opponent loses a life and you gain a life. So extremely useful on that one. The backup commander we're also running, right? I am not Nalia, right? 3 mana, 3/3. You may look at the top card of your library at any time, and you can cast a party member from the top of your library. At the beginning of combat, if you got a full party, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control, and those creatures gain Death Touch until the end of turn. So build a party, play this, swing. Mirror Entity is another finisher that we run in this deck. It's a shapeshifter changeling, which means it can fit any role in your party. And you can pay X to turn all creatures with into base power and toughness XX onto on the amount, right? So extremely useful to just swing out and surprise your opponent with something that they're not ready for. Bird Wizard, Flash, Flying. If an opponent would search a library, that player searches the top 4 cards instead. Just a way to mess up your opponent a little bit. Talking about opponent mess up, we run an Op Agent here. I was lucky enough to pull an Op Agent. If you don't have this, you can replace it with any other rogue, but Op Agent is really nice to bother your opponent. We got Veto over here. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life, and creatures you control gain lifelink until the end of turn using its activated effect. Harper Recruiter. I like a Harper Recruiter. When it attacks, look at the top 4 cards of your library. Reveal a party member and put those cards into your hand. Put the rest in the bottom of your library in any order. Like I said, we need to keep redundancy. If we have a party on the field, we're going to want to start building a party in our hand just in case the board gets wiped. So run Harper Recruiter to just make sure that things don't go sideways in one board wipe. Assault Intercessor. What is an Astartes doing here? Well, we're about to find out. First Strike, Menace. Whenever this card enters the battlefield, it gains First Strike and Menace, right? Chainsword. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. So that's a huge tool for us. Gonti, to mess up your opponent a little more. 4 mana on the battlefield. Look at the top 4 cards, a target opponent's library, exile one of them face down, and you could cast mana, spend mana to cast spells. You know what a Gonti does. Extremely useful. Jazal Goldmane, First Strike. We want his activated ability. He's a warrior, of course, but for 5 mana, attacking creatures you control gain +X until the end of turn, where X is the number of attacking creatures. Build a big party, swing out, pop his effect, and all of a sudden, all your creatures gain +4/+4, assuming you have a full party. Squad Commander. When it enters the battlefield, create a warrior. Redundancy, which is good, for each creature in your party. So you can create up to 4 core warriors with this effect, right? At the beginning of combat of your turn, if you have a full party, creatures you control gain +1/+0 and indestructible. We're nearing the end here. Smogsteed Rider, 4 mana. When it attacks other attacking creatures, gain Fear until the end of turn. A little known effect, but Fear just means that only creatures with oh no, I'm messing it up. Hold on, give me 30 seconds. So continuing on, I had to focus my mind and remember. And by remember, I mean not look it up. But when it attacks, each other attacking creature gains Fear, meaning it can only be blocked by black creatures and artifacts. So, extremely useful for some evasion on our side of the field. A little protection for our commander, right? 4 mana, a Custodes Warrior, flash with vigilance. Its effect though, commanders you control have protection from everything. Your opponent is going to want to remove your commander very quickly because he's extremely useful. Pop this guy and they can't touch him. Grim Hireling gives us more treasure. Whenever one or more creatures you control deal combat damage to a player, create 2 treasure tokens. You can sacrifice X treasures to give a target creature -X until the end of turn. So very, very useful to just remove something that your opponent is trying to keep to the side. Irregular Cohort. This is a changeling that when it enters, you create another shapeshifter, right? So you'll have 2 party members for the cost of 1. We're nearing the end with Solemn Doom Guide. It's a 5 mana 4/5 flying. Each creature card in your graveyard that's a party member has Unearthed, which means it allows us to bring back those guys from the grave. If they hit us with a board wipe, this guy is extremely useful, allowing us to put them back on the battlefield, right? They'll leave at the end of the battlefield, but maybe we'll have just enough to beat down our opponent. We're finishing off last creature, Astarion the Decadent. 6 mana, 4/4, Death Touch Lifelink. His effect, this guy is potentially our game ender. At the beginning of your end step, choose 1. Each opponent loses life equal to the amount of life they lost this turn, or friends. You gain life equal to the amount of life you gained this turn. If you've been paying attention, we're draining our opponent and we're gaining life. So we can pop his effect at our end step and really, really take down some enemies with this effect. I love Astarion in this deck. A huge, strong addition, right? Those are all the creatures. Let's move on to the artifacts. We're not running a lot of artifacts, but there are some in there that we need to talk about. We got a Wayfarer's Bauble just to fix our land. Skull Clamp is a useful tool to help give us more card advantage. Vat of Rebirth, I like. Whenever another artifact or creature you control is put into the graveyard, right? Put an oil counter on it. So, first we want to talk about an artifact or creature. So, when our creatures die, we're getting oil counters. You can remove 4 oil counters to return a target creature from your graveyard to the battlefield. Obviously, activate only as a sorcery. Also important to note that your artifacts, your treasures that your commander is making can be cracked. And when you crack them is putting oil on Vat of Rebirth. So Vat of Rebirth, an extremely strong card. Hold on. We got this one. The multi-class Baldric. 1 mana, right? Equipped creature has lifelink if you got a cleric, death touch if you got a rogue, haste if you got a warrior, and flying if you got a wizard. So if you got a full party, the equipped creature will have lifelink, death touch, haste, and flying. And let's talk about secondary effect. As long as you have a full party, prevent all damage that would be dealt to the equipped creature. This card is amazing. This card is I have a full party, and now here's my superhero. Here's the hero of the story, right? Whoever you equipped with this, right? I love this card. It's amazing. Continuing on, we got some mana to fix. We got Soul Ring, we got Arcane Signet, Orzhov Signet, Talisman of Heraldry, blah, right? We also have a Mask of Grizzleband. Equipped creature has flying and lifelink, and whenever equipped creature dies, you may pay X life, where X is power. If you do, draw X cards. So a good way to reward us if they eventually do kill our hero in this story. Finally, we have Oketra's Monument. 3 mana. White creature spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. We have a lot of white creatures. I like the secondary effect though. Whenever you cast a creature spell, create a white warrior creature token with vigilance. This allows us to always make sure we'll have warriors on the battlefield to fill our party. That's all the artifacts. Let's talk about the last bits of permanents we got. Enchantments. Only 3 enchantments to speak of. The Cleric class. If you would gain life, you gain that much life plus 1. Its upgraded effects is whenever you gain life, put a +1/+1 counter on a creature. And when it hits level 3, return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. You gain life equal to its toughness. A hugely powerful effect, considering we're going to be gaining life here and there, right? Now we have this life. What are we spending it on? Enter Black Market Connections. At the beginning of your first, on your pre-combat main phase, you must choose one of them, but you can also choose more. Spend 1 life to get a treasure token, spend 2 life to draw a card, spend 3 life to get a changeling. You know, that guy can be any party member. So this allows you to give yourself a ramp. This allows to give you card advantage, or even fill that party that you may be missing. Maybe you're missing that one pesky rogue. Well, Black Market Connections can put it on the battlefield. Last but not least, we have one more background, the Haunted one. Commander creatures you own gain. Whenever this creature becomes tapped, it and other creatures that share a creature type with it gain +2/+0 and Undying until the end of turn. So, what that means is, you want your commander to be swinging, right? Whenever it attacks, all other creatures that share a creature type with it get stronger, and if they were to die this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on it if it had no +1/+1 counters on it, right? So, extremely useful. You just got to be careful with that Undying effect, because if you've been buffing your own creatures with +1/+1 counters, then they won't have, the Undying effect won't trigger if they were to be destroyed. So you got to be careful with that last part, but everything else about this card is golden. Those are all the enchantments, those are all the permanents. Let's go into some spells. With our spells, our instant sorceries, we're going with a nice package of removal. We got white and black, so we're using it. Contraband Livestock. Exile target creature, then roll a d20, right? You could give the creature that you exile, the player whose creature you exiled, an ox, a 4/4 ox, a 2/2 boar, or a 0/1 goat, right? No matter what, we removed whatever we were targeting. Despark, of course. Generous Gift, Mortify, and finally, Crib Swap. Exile target creature, its controller creates a 1/1 color shapeshifter token with Changeling. Extremely useful. Now, this card is every creature type, so there are some cards, some effects, depending on where you cast this, where it's going to be checking. There are some effects that this might actually play into effect. Casting a card that is a cleric, wizard, right, and things like that. So you'll have to look carefully at your own cards, and I might even be able to put in some combos about this where this card might trigger with them. But you just got to double check sometimes, because Crib Swap might have some activated effects just by playing it, right? So those are all the spells, I believe. Let me double check here. No, it's not. Those are the removals. Some protection. We have Unbreakable Formation. Creatures you control gain indestructible, right? And if you cast this during your main phase, put a +1/+1 counter on each of those creatures, and they gain Vigilance until the end of turn. We have some Reanimation in Servine's Reclamation, right? Return a permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. We have a lot of creatures that cost 3 or less. If you cast this from your graveyard using its flashback, you can copy this spell and target a different creature, so it allows you to reanimate 2. So all in all, this card could give you up to 3 reanimation through its effect. We have Kaya's Wrath as a board wipe. We're running Coveted Prize. I really like this one. This card costs 1 less for each creature with your party, so a full party makes this card only 1 black. When you cast it, search your library and search a card for a library, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. If you have a full party, you may cast a spell, not the card you searched for, a spell from your hand with converted mana cost 4 or less without paying its mana cost. Extremely useful. This guy is wild. Stick Together. Each player chooses a party from among creatures they control, then sacrifice the rest. This is another board wipe, but I really like it because it's thematic. Right? It may not be the best board wipe, but you gotta stick together. You guys know, right? Thwart the Grave, right? Once again, this spell costs 1 less for each creature in your party, so it can be reduced by 4, making it only 2 black. When you cast a return target creature card and 1 party member from your graveyard to the battlefield. So it's a nice reanimation that, if everything's going right, only costs 2 black. Finally, we're running 1 final board wipe with Astur Command. Right? You can destroy all artifacts, enchantments, creatures with mana value 3 or less, or creatures with mana value 4 or greater. Just a nice versatility removal. That's all the spells, permanents. Let's finish off with the lands. We have a number of special lands, I like to call them. But let's open up with the basics, the ones you gotta rock. You got Command Tower, you got Exotic Orchard, and Path of Ancestry. Path of Ancestry is useful because it's 1 mana of any color, and if you spend that mana to cast a creature that shares a creature type with your commander, they all do, you get to scry 1. Now, getting a little different, we have Starlit Sanctum, right? You can sacrifice a cleric to gain life equal to the creature's toughness with a white mana, or with a black mana, sacrifice a cleric to make an opponent lose life equal to the creature's power, right? So, a nice versatile tool. Riptide Library. For 2 mana, you can return a wizard you control to its owner's hand. Right? Return target wizard you control to. So if they're trying to target your wizard with a removal, you pop this to bounce him back to your hand to protect him. Base Camp is the only party card land that they have, unfortunately. And it enters tapped, which sucks. It can be tapped for a colorless, or it can be tapped to give you a mana of any color, spending it only to cast a party member or activate a party member's effects. Opal Palace, and then we have those crack lands. We got Evolving Wilds and Myriad Landscape. Vault of the Archangel allows you to give your creatures Death Touch and Lifelink until the end of turn. And the Multi-Vault can be tapped for 1 to turn it into a creature, right? With all creature types. So let's say you're short just a party member, you can spend 1 mana and now you have that guy to make a full party for you. The Labyrinth allows you to remove target attacking or blocking creature from combat. Maybe you swung in, right? And you messed up, or maybe your opponent had a combat trick. With the mana, this can save your creatures, right? Windbreak Heights, Hideaway, right? When it enters, look at the top 4 cards, exile 1 face down. For 1 white mana, you can play that card without paying its mana cost if you attack with 3 or more creatures this turn. So take a full party in, swing with them, and then for 1 white mana, you can cast whatever you hid underneath this. Now we have our almost basics. We have Tainted Field, Orzhov Guildgate, right? And then now I believe, yes, we're in the basics. Let's finish off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 swamps. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 plains. And that's all there is to it. Let's go into the closing thoughts. Burakos, the party leader, who's also a folk hero. Now, obviously you guys should already be aware that this was a pre-con, right? But I added a lot of cards and leaned into a very specific game plan, right? The game plan with this deck is draining our opponent. Very basic Orzhov playstyle. We're draining our opponent, giving ourselves life. And usually one of the big issues of this deck, white and black color combination, we don't have a lot of ability to ramp. Burakos finishes that, or fixes that, by allowing us to create treasures when he swings out. So he's extremely useful, and it helps tie everything together into a nice combo. Some things you need to look out for, like I keep stressing, don't overcommit your party. If you have a full party, maybe have 1 or 2 guys on the side to assist your party, but don't fill the battlefield. Protect your hand, because all it takes is 1 board wipe and you're on the back foot again. So this is not a good thing to go all out on. You want to buff your party together. You want to have the most optimized party, the best warrior, the best rogue, the best cleric, the best wizard, and they're taking down your opponents. That's ideal, right? Or just you're draining them out using cards like Burakos and everyone else who does those life gains and life drain effects. So that's all there is to it. Thanks for checking me out. Like, comment, subscribe, all that weird stuff, and I'll see you guys next time.